and welcome to another episode of the Big Game Hunters. I'm Mike.
And I'm Tom. We've got our Kickstarter in full campaign mode right now, so check that out if you're a fan of the show and help us support Season 3. Today, we're going to review a game from Reiner, Knizia, Blue Moon City. But first, we have Chit Chat.
In today's Chit Chat, we're going to be talking about rubber band mechanics and swing in individual cards and in games in general. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the Chit Chat. Today, we're going to be talking about rubber banding and swing. So I think we'll just get started with rubber banding. This is a term that most people will probably have heard at some point or be familiar with. It is also sometimes called catch the leader mechanics.
Or catch-up mechanics.
But I like rubber banding. I think it kind of gives a nice visual. It's any mechanic that brings the pack together in some way. Usually one that rewards the player in last place by bringing them closer to the player in first place. Hence the rubber band. So rubber band mechanics, you see them in a lot of Euros. I think it's primarily because a lot of Euro games are also family games. So you don't want the kids to get pushed out of a game and have to sit there and kind of suffer through a game that they can see that they're out of. So it narrows the field. It brings the field together, no matter what the game. I usually am not a fan of them. I don't see them implemented well too much. There's a few that I'm okay with, but even they kind of bother me. So again, we've looked at so far that has a kind of minor rubber band mechanic is Galaxy Trucker. In Galaxy Trucker, when the player in the lead advances backward, it's kind of a reverse rubber band. When he spends days in order to get more points, he moves backward. When he hits another ship, he doesn't count that space and leapfrogs the ship. Yeah. The same is true in exact reverse in Primordial Soup, another kind of Euro game, where the score track is identical. You have a score track around the board. You can never have two amoebas land on the same space. So when somebody scores, the points are done in reverse order, so it's very common for people to leapfrog off of a lot of players. So if the player in last has a decent play and catches the pack, he can then jump immediately to the front of the pack.
When preparing for this chit chat, I could not think of any specific board games that I still play where I'd seen that. I can remember instances seeing rubber band mechanics and thinking, no thanks, this game, because of this mechanic, I'm not interested in this game. And it's usually something like screw the leader. Like if you're in last place, the first player loses a turn, or you gain 8 points, or whatever it is, something like that. And because of that game just isn't appealing to me. And I think I traditionally find it in games that I favor, like the Ameritrash games. So those two don't complement each other well. They're competitive.
You said you usually find rubber band mechanics in American games?
The reason I just discard those kind of games is because I would find them in those kind of games. And they don't work well in that kind of game.
Can you think of one?
I can't. I really can't. I tried. I do see them a lot in video games, in like Mario Kart.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Blue Turtle Shell. I think my favorite catch-up mechanic ever that I thought of is from the Sega Genesis game Mutant League Football, Viking Football, something like that. I can't remember the exact name of the game, but it's Viking something. It's two Viking warring tribes in a medieval time, but they're playing American football. And when one team starts to lose bad enough, the crowd will start chanting, troll, troll, troll. And then that player from the sidelines gets a troll that can't be stopped. The troll just grabs the ball and eats the head off the guy who's got the ball. And then he carries it and he runs down the field and can't be stopped. And then you get that troll until you're right behind the person in the lead. That's my favorite catch-up mechanic. That's the only reason to play that game, is so that you can lose and get the troll.
Interesting. You see it sometimes. I think it's in a lot of different auction games. I think you see it in Kicklities, but don't quote me. It's been a while since I played that. I'm not a fan of Kicklities, actually. Maybe it's something we should look at in the future, just because it's so popular and it does not do it for me. But that aside, you see in a lot of auction games where that person will get to go first in the auction or get first dibs on something because they were in the back. It's pervasive in Power Grid, from what I understand. I haven't actually played Power Grid, but it's a big part of Power Grid. Apparently, it's a big part of the strategy in that game. But yeah, I think normally they annoy me in general. Even though I do like both Galaxy Trucker and the Amoeba game, Primordial Soup, I find them both annoying. I don't like the catch-up mechanics. I think, because I tend not to play with family. I tend to play with friends who I'm competing with on equal terms. And when those kind of things come up, I feel like you have to kind of game the game. You have to kind of play it in a weird way in order to take advantage of them. I don't like in games where I want to not stay in the lead, where I want to have not the highest score so as not to arouse the ire of the game or the players.
Right.
I think this applies a lot to games where you have natural screw the leader. So in games like Small World, for instance, Small World wisely has the money hidden.
Yes.
But if you're playing carefully, if you're paying attention, you can kind of figure out where people stand in terms of their cash. So in Small World, if you get too far ahead, you get beat down more than I would like. I still like Small World because that's not a huge part of the game, but that kind of natural screw the leader is annoying.
So from a conceptual standpoint, rubber band mechanics have both a pro and a con aspect.
Sure.
So the pro obviously is it makes the game closer and tighter. Right. The con is that it can minimize the skill of the game. So that's why I say I think it's right, maybe not right and enjoyable for certain Euro games, but it fits more in a Euro game because those games are more compelling when they're close. Whereas with the Ameritrash style game, it can be more compelling when they're close, but the idea of those games is to just annihilate your opponent.
Yes. You don't. Yeah, I mean, you have more player elimination, for instance. That's the ultimate form of not rubber banding. Right. Player elimination.
Right.
I also think it's important. Now, some games I think have, and you don't see this as much with rubber banding per se, but with kind of natural screw the leader mechanics. I think with things that maybe the game is not punishing the leader, but the players jump on the leader so much. Once that player becomes the leader, then they get jumped on. It just kind of goes on and on. And the only way to get out of that is with kind of ramp up mechanics. The best example I've actually heard of this is also a video game. And although, there's another one. You think about it with carriers. So the idea is that carriers and the big Terran ships in StarCraft are so powerful that they can go tear through any defenses.
Yeah.
That eventually in StarCraft, a player will be able to wipe out another player's base, no matter how much defense they've amassed. It also is kind of, it kind of applies to Epic Duels. Epic Duels, the basic combat deck, the attacks cap out at 5 and usually higher with power attacks. The defense caps at 4 and you'll see less power defense. The decks are all slanted towards offense, even the most defensive decks. And that means the game inevitably moves toward conclusion no matter what you do. So I just think that's kind of an important thing to remember. Like, I've seen a few games, not too many, that have too much of everyone, kind of jumping around at the end problem. And they don't have a natural conclusion.
We, I think, sort of see the game playing against the characters, the players. We sort of see that with the game we're going to review today, Blue Moon City, with how the obelisk works. The entry price to scoring on the obelisk track is much lower than it is toward the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing kind of is tangentially, really. The other topic today is swing.
Swing.
So, or swingosity, if you prefer. And this is not like a term that I've heard a lot. But when I'm using it in the technical sense, what I mean by swing is it can either apply to cards in a given deck or to a deck as a whole, if it has a lot of those kinds of cards. I'm thinking about this in mostly faction games or games like that. Okay. And with swing, I'm talking about how much a given element swings the game one way or the other. Okay. So if you're behind, a swingy card can all of a sudden put you ahead. It can all of a sudden really drastically alter the game state. Now, I think in games where you have the cards are all of a certain even keel, these swingy cards can really hurt it. I'm thinking, again, of an Epic Duels example with the Emperor. Very, very swingy card, and you will die, which makes the opponent discard their entire hand. Instantly changes the game state. I find those kind of problematic. They also make me feel like the game is not ramping up at a natural pace. It's like all of a sudden, you're going through a game, and bam, that changes everything. It's in seasons, too. In seasons, some of the cards we house rule out, like the Vampiric Crown. You play it, you get to draw a power card, and then you gain resources equal to that power card's cost, which usually fills your entire tray. That's huge. That's a tremendous swing on one card. Not just overpowered, but completely changes the game.
I think I see swing in the light of the Ameritrash versus Euro games, that swing, you will find more swing in Ameritrash games.
Because mostly event cards, I think.
Yeah, and I think that is part of the appeal of those games, is that you're maybe subconsciously or unconsciously, but you're looking for those cards that wow you when they come out and play. Like, oh crap, he just played You Will Die on me. That's amazing.
But I think there's definitely for me an acceptable range of swing when something is drastically outside of it. It feels like cards will usually conform to a certain curve. Every once in a while, you'll get a big outlier. In Thunderstone, if a monster comes out that's, whoa, like this thing is immune to magic and it kills all my heroes, and I can't use strength against. It's like there are monsters in Thunderstone that come out that completely stymie the game. Every deck can't deal with them. They're just too big and have too many effects.
That's pretty swingy.
So yeah,
I'm reminded also that Neuroshima Hex game we may get to this season has quite a bit of swing in particularly some of those like single-use tiles when they come out.
The bomb,
even the sniper though. Like if your opponent has good board position with his tiles, that sniper tile when you get that can really screw up your opponent. There's a lot of swing in those single-use tiles. Yeah,
so I mean that's something I always kind of look at with any event deck kind of game, with any faction game, is that I don't want the game to change incredibly drastically on the turn of one card. I don't want to. That card eats up the entire experience. Then all you can talk about then is, wow, when that card came out, that was the deciding force. Everything else that happened in that game, all was subservient to that card play.
And that's generally a bad thing. That
for me,
defining moment.
Yeah, it's too much of the game experience.
I think I see it as a potential positive of Ameritrash games, but I guess maybe if it doesn't go in my favor.
Yeah, then sing a different tune. But yeah, that's all the time we have for today's Chit Chat. That's all we have to say about rubber banding and swing. We will now teach you how to play Blue Moon City. Now I'm going to teach you how to play Blue Moon City. In Blue Moon City, players vie in order to compete in important districts in the city and score points. The goal of the game is to be the first player to place a number of your own cubes on the obelisk. The number you need varies with the number of players. For a 4-player game, you'll need 4 cubes. For a 3-player game, you'll need 5 cubes, and for a 2-player game, you'll need 6 cubes on the obelisk. Note that in a 2-player game, you do not use 2 of the 7 spaces. Once one player reaches that number of cubes on the obelisk, or no player can do so, then the game ends. Blue Moon City comes with a number of city building components. Most prominently, you'll notice the dragons. When a dragon witnesses you placing one of your cubes on the space he's occupying, he'll give you one of his scales. When all the dragon scales you're using have been divvied out, they'll be traded in for crystals. Any player who has fewer than 3 dragon scales will keep his dragon scales until the next time they're traded in. Any player who has at least 3 will trade them in for crystals. The player with the most dragon scales, if there is not a tie, will get 6 crystals. If there is a tie, everyone who trades them in will get 3 crystals. And if you have at least 3, you'll trade them in for 3 crystals, assuming that you're not the player with the most. In addition, the game comes with a number of crystal tokens in 1 and 3 denominations. These crystals will primarily be spent to place your tokens on the obelisk and win the game. Of course, the game also has a number of city tiles on it. On the front side, you'll see what you need to complete the city. This is in color and number, so you'll need to discard a 5 value in red in order to complete this space. When you do so, the player who contributes the most will get the top row and the bottom row, and every other player will simply get the bottom row in rewards. In addition, in the top and on the back, you'll see what this city tile contributes to adjacent city tiles when they're completed. Of course, Blue Moon City also has a number of cards that you'll use to fuel your endeavors. They come in 8 suits. The first one is green, and green only comes in 1 values. Every other suit will have 1s, 2s, and 3s. Green cards can be used as any color. Brown 1s and 2s have the ability to be exchanged for as any color. Any combination of browns, 1s, and 2s equal a 3 in any color. In other words, a brown 1 and a brown 1 equal a 3 of any color, a brown 2 and a brown 2, or a brown 1 and a brown 2. Brown 3s have no effect, and in addition, no 3s in the game have any special abilities. White 1s can be discarded in order to change 4 of your other cards that you're using of the same suit into one other suit for the purpose of 1 placement. White 2s work the same way, except they can only change the color of 1 card. A yellow 1 can be discarded while you're on the center space to place an additional cube on the obelisk, except you have to pay an additional +1 crystal for the second placement. The 2 works the same way, but costs yet again 1 more crystal for a total of +2 cost. Gray 1s allow you to move your pawn to any space. Gray 2s allow you to move your pawn up to 2 additional spaces. And finally, black, blue, and red. Black 1s let you move the red dragon to any space. Black 2s let you move the red dragon up to 3 additional spaces. Blue 1s, move the blue dragon to any space. Blue 2s move the blue dragon up to 3 additional spaces. And finally, red 1s move the green dragon, I know it's a little confusing, to any space. And red 2s move the green dragon 3 spaces. To set up a game of Blue Moon City, you'll first build the board. To do so, you'll place the Rainbow Palace to one side of the middle obelisk, and then place the 3 temples, these are the 5, 4, 3 spaces, on the remaining adjacent sides. Then you'll fill out the rest of the board randomly with all the city tiles on the blueprint side, not the completed side. Once you've done that, each player chooses a color, takes the pawn of that color, and places it on the center space, and of course takes 10 cubes of that color and places them in a stock next to him. You'll use a number of dragon scales based on the number of players. For a 4-player game, you use all 15 scales. For a 3-player game, 12 scales. And for a 2-player game, 9 scales. The dragons themselves will start off of the board. In order to get them on the board for the first time, someone will have to play the corresponding 1 card. Finally, you'll shuffle the deck and deal 8 cards to each player. Now you're ready to begin Blue Moon City. Blue Moon City is played out in rotating turns, and on your turn, you'll go through 3 steps. First, you'll move your pawn up to 2 spaces. You may not move diagonally. At this time, you'll play any dragon movement abilities you'd like, and any gray abilities in order to move yourself additional spaces. You may not play these abilities at any other time during your turn. Therefore, you cannot make an offering, then move, then make another offering. Once you have moved, you can make any number of offerings as long as these offerings are made separately. To make an offering, you'll discard cards from your hand that equal the value of your space you're trying to take. If I'm trying to make a 5 black offering, I'll have to discard cards that add up to 5 black points. When you make an offering, you'll take one of your cubes and place it in the slot for which you've completed. If you complete this city by having all the offerings taken by either yourself or a combination of yourself and other players, you'll flip it over. When you flip it, if you contributed the most, you'll gain the top level of reward plus the bottom. If you do not contribute the most, you'll just get the bottom level of rewards. You'll know who contributed the most by who placed offerings in the most spaces. If 2 players are tied for this, the player who played the leftmost offering will get the additional bonus rewards. Of course, you'll also get rewards based on any completed tiles next to that one. So if this tile were next to the one you're completing, you get an additional 3 crystals. Once you've completed your offerings, then you'll refresh your hand. To do so, you'll discard 0, 1, or 2 cards, then draw 2 plus the number you discarded. Once you've done so, you'll end your turn, and play continues in this manner until one player has made the requisite number of offerings. You must make offerings on the center space. You cannot make them elsewhere, and when you do so, you can make additional offerings by playing yellow card effects. Once player makes enough offerings, the game ends. Now you know how to play Blue Moon City. Now that you know how to play Blue Moon City, we're going to take a look at it in our patented point-counterpoint review.
Because Mike and I agree about the game, I'm going to roll to see who will argue for it and who will argue against. If it's even, I'll take the pros, and if it's odd, he will. It's even.
Hallelujah, it's even. So now, Tom, you for once will get to tell us how much you love Blue Moon City. The only game you've ever loved, apparently. I, however, will explain in tremendous detail and quite convincingly why Blue Moon City should never leave your shelf.
All right, first of all...
To hit the table, that is.
First of all, this game, it defies categorization. I think the easiest way to explain it is that it's a semi-co-op game.
I did have trouble categorizing it when I was doing the tutorial. I like to give a little phrase. Sure. I didn't have one for this.
So I think that the semi-co-opness of it is shown in all the aspects of gameplay. So First of all, what I mean by semi-co-op is that you are competing against each other. There is only one winner of the game, but all the aspects of the game that play into the point winning, you need the other players at the table to earn those points. So the most basic one, you're making offerings to build city districts. The best strategy there is to start an offering and allow your opponents or your teammates to complete those districts for you. Thereby, you gain maximum amount of resources from minimal amount of investment. This is also amplified when a district is completed and the districts around it get completed. They earn rewards from the ones near them.
They start to ramp up.
Right,
yeah.
right. And so that is also dependent on players around you completing those city districts. You see the same kind of thing in the dragon scales. Those are worth a certain amount depending on how many people invest in them, but you need the other players to be invested in them for them to become valuable. So you do want to be the...
Otherwise, you'll never cycle the dragon scales.
Right. You do want to be the guy with the most dragon scales, but you don't want to be the only one going after dragon scales. Otherwise, it's not a valuable commodity. And then lastly, you see that kind of interplay in the obelisk scoring. So if you're the first person to enter that obelisk, it doesn't cost you very much, but if you wait and you're the last person to enter, it costs you much more. It's the same kind of interplay. If everyone is involved, it just amps up the scoring.
Yeah, I agree. There's a very delicate dance that you're kind of doing in this game with your teammates or opponents, depending on how you think about it, in order to get the points, kind of leech off them and also work with them. That's interesting. But the problem is that delicate dance so frequently ends in stalemate. What an unsatisfying evening that we've had dancing when we both just have to go home empty-handed. So with this game, it has happened too many times, not that much, but at least 2 games that I can recall where we've gotten into a situation where everyone's played cautiously, everyone's played wisely, people haven't been giving out points left and right, people haven't been letting their teammates leech overly on their districts, and what happens is players can't accrue enough points to make the final offering to win the game without another player setting that up for them. In other words, you end up on the last district. Nobody has definitively enough to finish the game. The last district will give multiple players enough, but that means that no player can finish it because as soon as that player does so, the next player in line will be the first one to move on to the obelisk and make the final offering. So you have a situation where nobody can complete the game and you just have to call it. And that's really a bummer after an hour to an hour and a half of building these things and really burning your brain on playing your cards or offerings.
Which is why I think it's safely labeled a semi-co-op game, because when that is the result, nobody wins. So my next favorite thing about the game is the hand management aspect. We have 8 different types of cards, and while all the cards are useful at some point in the game, it's really the decisions you're making every turn regarding, should I use this card as an offering? Should I use this card as the color that it is to get me more whatever? Or should I use it for its card ability? So the 1s and the 2s in most of the numbers. Some of them give you an ability that you only use sometime, like moving the dragon or moving your piece or scoring extra on the obelisk chart. But then the other ones allow you to convert to other colors or count as other specific number of colors or whatever. Those are decisions that help just sort of drive the tactical aspect of the game of what should I do this turn to maximize the points I'm going to get. That's a really interesting mechanic.
I agree. That really does drives the game. I think the problem you mentioned yourself when you said that you'll only use some cards in rare situations, or that some cards just aren't that as valuable. So really, what I'm thinking of here are the dragon moving cards. These cards are fine when played for their colors, but their abilities are really lackluster compared to the browns, whites, and greens, which just make it easier for you to make those offerings you so desperately need. Moving the dragons is fine. I mean, if I have the cards, I'll play them sometimes for the purpose of moving the dragon, but you don't need to play them. Whereas the browns, whites, and greens, you'll need those in the course of the game. There's no getting around it. You will absolutely, if you don't have those, be hurting because you will not be able to make the offerings that you need to make on the spaces you need to make them. Grays play into that as well. Grays get you where you need to be. So I'm always happy to see a gray 1 in my hand. Not so with the dragon moving cards, and to some extent, the extra offering cards. These are really helpful in the very early game. After that, they kind of drop off, but you're always going to want those browns, whites, and greens. In addition, there's a little bit of a balance issue with, in the early to throughout really the whole mid-game, getting cards as rewards. When you complete something and it gives you a card or even multiple cards, that fuels your next offering. And these things that give you cards also give you crystals and scales. Sure. So you're basically just making free progress. Because cards are so important, because cards are the lifeblood of your game, getting them as a reward for building is just win-win more.
When they show up in the early, yeah, it can be.
Through mid, I'd say.
So we mentioned the cards themselves. I think my next big pro on this game is everything's of great quality. Everything's real durable. You get some nice detailed plastic miniatures, wood pieces. The tiles are nice and durable, and I really think the art is evocative on them, where you have blueprints or sketches, whatever you want to call it, on one side, and then a finished product on the other side. Mm-hmm. Yeah, quality components. This game is great.
I agree. The components are nice, but don't you think they're a little overproduced, Tom? I mean, do you really need these rubbery plastic dragons in this game?
Maybe not need.
I'm one of the few people that actually played Blue Moon. That's how far back I go. That's right. I'm an OG. And I played Blue Moon, and that also came with these damn dragons. It was a card game. These were just used to score a point. These were literally a point tracker, of which there are 3. You don't need them. I don't know why Cosmos keeps throwing these in here. They don't do anything. They look nice, but I mean, for the price, they're fine, but they make the box huge, and they're just too much. So it's a very clean game. Why do you have to have these elaborate components? The gameplay is good enough.
You're really mad about that.
Why, Dragon?
All right.
They're second only to the chariots in Tribune in terms of what the hellness.
Okay, so we've given our point-counterpoint review. What do you think about the game for real?
So, despite how emphatically I felt I needed to make my last point, I do enjoy the game. It's another Reiner Knizia game. His games are never complete misses. I don't love them all, but I don't hate any of them. And this one falls in that category as well. You know what? This one, I'm gonna give it a 7. I like it. The co-op mechanic is interesting. I really think it's very unique. It's very hard to describe. I agree with the inability to characterize it. It doesn't have a lot of luck, as we've defined it, but it has some kind of something else, a certain je ne sais quoi, that it's not quite luck, but winning or losing the game really does depend on what happens around you more than what you can do yourself. So because of the low level of control I feel in this game compared to his other games. Yep. We looked at Lost Cities. That's the opposite. The lack of control is going to put this one only at a 7 for me.
I actually have pretty much the same opinion because there's so little control and it's not luck as we've defined it. As I've said before, I like luck as we've defined it. I think that makes games fun and engaging and gives you those laugh moments. This doesn't have that. It does have the competition. But again, you can always not always, but often will end in a stalemate. It just doesn't really click together for me as a combat-driven game. It's a semi-co-op game, and it's too much in a bunch of general areas for me. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I would play it, and in the right group, it'll be really fun. But for my own home, no good. Yeah.
I like the delicate dance, but like I said, sometimes I feel like I just got beat by the other dancers without having much choice.
Sure.
But yeah, now I think it's time to break it down.
This is the breakdown of Reiner Knizia's Blue Moon City. The game plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. It's right in that middle ground of long and short, so we give it a 50-50 split. We give it 35 fast because the turns are relatively quick, but because you don't act on your opponent's turn and because maybe half the time your turns aren't directly affected by your opponent's, we give it 65 slow. We give Blue Moon City 30 luck because all cards are not equal, and we give it 70 skill because the game is won or lost on your ability to manage your cards and get involved in those big reward districts. We give it 35 strategy because getting the maximum reward for the minimal investment requires planning, but 65 tactics because maximizing your card hand is what drives your strategy. Because you can get sectioned off and forced to develop sections of the city alone, we give it 15 independence. because maybe half of your offerings either affect or are directly affected by other players, and because you only score big points in tandem with other players, we give it 85 interaction. We give it 10 immersion because the evocative tiles are reminiscent of building city districts and it fits with the rebuilding city theme. Otherwise, it's an abstract positioning hand management game. We give it 80 simplicity because it's an easy-to-learn game, but you may have to reference what the symbols on each card do occasionally, and you may forget that the third card in each set doesn't have a special ability, so we give it 20 complexity. We give it 50-50 on portability and grandeur. It's an average-size game in an average-size box. We give it 95 completeness and only 5 expandability, because you could always add more cards or tiles, but you really don't need to. For our trophy scales, we give it 5 trophies in originality. On the surface, it might appear like it's a similar game to Alhambra, but it really is a unique game that defies genre categorization. For value, we give it 3 trophies. It's a moderately priced game, but it has excellent components. Mike gives it a 7 out of 10, Tom gives it a 6 out of 10, and that is the breakdown of Blue Moon City.
We hope you enjoyed rebuilding Blue Moon City. Next week, in the Chit Chat, we're going to be talking about brain burners and downtime. And we're going to be playing the trader game Battlestar Galactica.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly updates. See the links below for our Facebook, Twitter, and Kickstarter pages. Send us that money, we need it. And leave us a comment on your thoughts on rubber banding or swinginess.
See you next week.
That's my impetus behind wanting this. I want to say enjoy it, yeah.
You're just jealous now.
All right. So then rather than say enjoy it, you can say enjoy this show, but wait till I'm done talking about Kickstarter, which is going to come after Chit Chat.
Tom, I'm not programmed for we hope you enjoy this show.
All right, then I have to say
I only have so many preloaded phrases.
Your DOS is much more versatile than mine.
Let's do this.
We hope you enjoy. Shit, now look what you did.